2 Corinthians 8. Moreover, brethren, we do you to wit of the grace of God bestowed on the churches of Macedonia, how that in a great trial of affliction the abundance of their joy and their deep poverty abounded unto the riches of their liberality. For to their power I bear record, yea, and beyond their power they were willing of themselves, praying us with much entreaty that we would receive the gift, and take upon us the fellowship of the ministering to the saints. And this they did, not as we hoped, but first gave their own selves to the Lord, and unto us by the will of God, insomuch that we desired Titus, that as he had begun, so he would also finish in you the same grace also. Therefore, as ye abound in everything, in faith, and utterance, and knowledge, and in all diligence, and in your love to us, see that ye abound in this grace also. I speak not by commandment, but by occasion of the forwardness of others, and to prove the sincerity of your love. For ye know the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, that, though he was rich, yet for your sakes he became poor, that ye through his poverty might be rich. And herein I give my advice, for this is expedient for you, who have begun before, not only to do, but also to be forward a year ago. Now therefore perform the doing of it, that as there was a readiness to will, so there may be a performance also out of that which ye have. For if there be first a willing mind, it is accepted according to that a man hath, and not according to that he hath not. For I mean not that other men be eased, and ye burdened, but by an equality, that now at this time your abundance may be a supply for their want, that their abundance also may be a supply for your want, that there may be equality, as it is written, He that had gathered much had nothing over, and he that had gathered little had no lack. But thanks be to God, which put the same earnest care into the heart of Titus for you. For indeed he accepted the exhortation, but being more forward, of his own accord he went unto you. And we have sent with him the brother, whose praise is in the gospel throughout all the churches, and not that only, but who was also chosen of the churches to travel with us with this grace, which is administered by us to the glory of the same Lord, and declaration of your ready mind. Avoiding this, that no man should blame us in this abundance which is administered by us, providing for honest things, not only in the sight of the Lord, but also in the sight of men. And we have sent with them our brother, whom we have oftentimes proved diligent in many things, but now much more diligent upon the great confidence which I have in you. Whether any do inquire of Titus, he is my partner and fellow helper concerning you, or our brethren be inquired of, they are the messengers of the churches and the glory of Christ. Wherefore show ye to them and before the churches the proof of your love and of our boasting on your behalf.
Good evening. It's Friday, August 29, 2014. This is your host, Mike Callahan, and welcome to the Watchman News. Hope everybody's having a good evening. Hope they got some good plans for the weekend. I'll be watching the news. So anyway, lots of crazy stuff going on. Lots of crazy stuff. Got plenty of news for you. And if I have time after I'm done doing the news that I have for you, I've got a few ways that I can go with things. There's a lot going on today in news with Ebola. I don't have any stories of that lined up for you today. Instead, I have more things along the lines of what you can see in the About tab. But I've got quite a few videos today, not because I'm trying to be lazy or get out of actually having a decent show. It just kind of worked out that way. a lot of good videos actually. BP Earthwatch have a couple of videos from him, and some news stories about like the equipment that the police have and what's going on with that, and you know, typical the Watchman news kind of stuff. So anyway, let's go ahead and get suspicious observers out of the way. I still haven't heard anything more whatsoever about News in 2 Minutes. So really don't know what they're up to, what they have planned. Hopefully they make an appearance sometime soon. It would be nice. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get suspicious observers out of the way and then go from there.
Good morning, folks. We'll start quickly with Earth's geomagnetic situation. The solar wind density spikes were large again, and the speed began rising again the last few hours, generating more magnetic instability above our heads. So yesterday we saw the Vanuatu and Iceland locations have 6 magnitude readings despite the officially listed magnitude being well lower. Happened again in Japan last night and this morning in Greece, making 4 potential magnitude 6 shakes, just as the coronal hole faces Earth. ISWA is showing this to be fairly powerful. We do have only another day of this positive influence from the north. The southern coronal hole incoming is negatively polarized and of significant power as well, about another day or two. We also had a volcanic eruption in Papua New Guinea. Some of the photographs coming in from this area are absolutely beautiful. NASA's Earth Observatory also showing the new island near Japan ever growing in size due to the volcanic eruption ongoing there. Solar eruptions have been somewhat muted as the flare energy is low. The sunspots look unprepared to change that, just not enough mixing with the beta spot up north. Meanwhile, the incoming spots are spread magnetically and lack significant size. That leaves the plasma filaments as the primary eruption threat. The incoming rope is hundreds of thousands of miles long. We actually had a filament destabilize yesterday on the departing half of the disk. Surges around in the corona quite a bit, mostly fell back down to the sun. Interesting article on asteroid collision, detected light years away near a sun-like star. More interesting is the date it was noticed, making one wonder why it took so long to publish. Oh well, Marie in the Pacific is dying, but making her mark on the coastline with rain and heavy wave activity even north to California. These videos compiled by weather.com. Shift slightly east and we're in the central U.S., checking the low and extending northern flow. Right now, NOAA isolated the flood zone to watch, but truly these storms are affecting a huge area. There will be severe alerts issued in the central states tonight, so please pay attention to your local forecasts. Shifting east once more, we see Cristobal in the Atlantic, and folks, we've seen this with tropical storms and earthquakes, but never with a volcano. Cristobal heading right for the alert under the ice. The low west of Iceland actually draws a convergence all the way through the middle of Europe, wrapping around the low sitting atop Ireland and the UK. Storm zones match accordingly. The power low is just north of being able to affect New Zealand, while a minor convergence rolls over Western Australia. This is a minor alert. Mobile Observatory is in Calgary, Alberta today. It is an early event, so check out observatoryproject.com for details. Got the global storm watches and shots of our star to close. It's 6:20 a.m. Eastern Time, 4:20 a.m. here in Calgary. That's the news. Eyes open, no fear. Be safe, everyone.
That's Ben Davidson with Suspicious Observers. Much appreciate his daily shows. I'm going to be keeping an eye on that filament that's coming around towards the Earth. I don't know. I can't believe that I'm the only one on this planet, and I'm sure I'm not, that wouldn't necessarily mind being put back in the Stone Age. I don't know. Just kind of sounds nice to me sometimes. I'll miss technology if it were to happen, but you know, it's kind of one of those things. You weigh the pros and cons, and there are so many more pros of losing a lot of this technology. That way, we would get to know each other again, as you know, as human beings. There would actually be such things as going and seeing people face to face, instead of just communicating on social media or other forms. But anyway, I'll quit dreaming and get on with the news, I suppose. So there's been some pretty interesting statements that was said by Putin. He was in a little question and answer session at I don't know exactly how it's pronounced, Seliger 2014. It's a youth forum. So anyway, he made a rather interesting statement that anything the U.S. touches turns into Libya or Iraq. And so anyway, I figured I'd play this video for you because it's interesting, the statements that have been coming out of Putin. And I don't trust any leaders. I think they're all part of the big scheme. I think it's all nothing but a big chess game. But it just seems anymore that almost that Putin talks more about freedom and Christianity and stuff like that than what our own administration does. So it's just interesting stuff. But I figured I'd play the video for you. You know, use your own discernment, have your own thoughts, of course. I just thought it was an awful interesting thing to say. So without further ado, let's let him say it.
I had a question about the United Nations. Everyone is aware that the idea of the UN as an organization was put forward by the coalition countries to maintain peace and calm and stability in Russia or Soviet Union at the time and the world. They decided to set up an organization that would tackle issues of international law and others. However, over the last 2 or 3 decades, there have been lots of cases proving that UN is dysfunctional. The so-called humanitarian interventions by the United States, for instance, the bombardment of Iraq, the war in Yugoslavia, brought on a lot of human casualties. However, the Mali intervention has been a success story, but nevertheless, do you think there is a need for a speedy reform of the United Nations organization with a new multipolar world arising? And do you think Russia should make the first steps in this direction?
You've raised a fundamental issue of global development and current status of international law. True, the UN was born out of World War II and reflected the then status quo. Of course, the status quo has now changed and the trends continue. The world is going through high-paced developments. Now, as to your question about the efficiency of the United Nations, well, when it was set up, the Cold War started, and Mr. Gromyko, Russia's foreign minister, was called Mr. Niet, Mr. No, because he always used to flatly refuse something. The US had its own, the Soviet Union has its own interests and its own views. And it's not true that the Soviet Union was always guided by its ideological interests. Very often the Soviet Union was guided by geopolitical interests of the nation. Currently, there's no ideological issues between us, but the fighting, the battle between us is still fierce. So geopolitics has always been behind these developments. So the UN has not always been efficient. You mentioned Yugoslavia, you mentioned Iraq. We were against the use of force in Iraq, just like France and Germany. It's unique that France and Germany were together with us against the US. You know, it speaks volumes. And when today the leaders of Europe are far from being independent, but it doesn't mean that this trend is non-existent. There is still such a trend for pursuing your own interests, for independence. If you look at European nations, if you look at the people, not all in the West seem to be noticing this. But the decisions that are taken outside the UN are always doomed to failure, as a rule. You mentioned Iraq. Take Libya. So in the Soviet Union there was a saying, whatever we start building, we have Avtomashnikov rifle. And it seems to be the same with the US. So whatever they start doing, all they end up with is Libya or Iraq. So when you start to do things in a unilateral way, it seems to have a short history. It's really fragile. Of course, it's hard to get consensus at the UN, because you have conflicting views, but that's the only way to forge a lasting solution. If this decision is balanced, if it's supported by all of the international stakeholders, then everyone starts to implement it in the best possible way, and then you get stability. So is the UN efficient today? Not always. You've just repeated a stereotype which our Western partners have always brought up as a trump card during the crisis in Iraq. And everyone used to say the UN doesn't work, you need to find another, to use other organizations like NATO. So unilateral decisions are usually ineffective. But I disagree with the stereotype that you mentioned. You just need to leverage the UN in the right way. You just have to respect each other's opinions.
I understand Putin and Russia is just another chess piece in the big chess game, but it's just really interesting to see how Putin and Russia are pushing freedom and independence. And since I can recall, since Reagan, the United States has been pushing this New World Order and even using those exact words, New World Order. I forgot how many times Bush Sr. said it during his presidency. He said it an unbelievable amount of times during one single interview that I have in mind here. And it's just wild to think this is the United States. I'm a citizen of the United States, and I'm thinking that Russia is talking and thinking and wanting more freedom and more independence than my own home country. And it's just mind-boggling to me that that's even an issue in my head. And it should be in every one of our heads. Every single citizen in this country should be thinking about that and considering that and understanding that. I'm not saying that we should start worshiping Putin. That's not the case. I think we need to start worshiping our Constitution. Well, of course, worshiping God first, but our Constitution. We really need to get back to the roots of that and understanding that, and we really need to start pushing the government to get back to the roots of that, because we're so far away from it today. It's absolutely scary how far we've came from it. It's sometimes I don't even like to think about it whatsoever. So anyway, let's get on with some other news. Going along with this chess game that's going on, it seems like many countries in the world are now starting to raise their terror alerts because of ISIS. And again, understand it's all chess pieces in a chess game, and they're building up for something. They're getting ready to impose this new world order, and I assure you of that. I promise you of that. There are so many signs of that. There are so many indicators of it. They're pushing for it all across the board of media, whether it be entertainment media, whether it be news media, all across the board. They're pushing for this, saying that we need it, you know, scaring us or trying to scare us into wanting it. Again, anytime they want something, they just push safety and security. And if just them alone putting the pressure on safety and security is not enough, bam, we get a false flag. And I would highly expect that we need to be watching for a false flag, possibly in several countries. I'm certain of one here, and probably one in the UK. And that's what this next video is about. It's a BP Earthwatch speaking about how the UK raises their terror alert. And I thought it was an interesting video. I think he done a really good job on it. And I think it's a situation that many countries, including our own, are facing today. And I do believe that in a false flag manner, we do need to be concerned with a terror alert. But just like I don't buy that 9/11 was by Saudi Arabian individuals, I don't buy that that whatever is going to happen in our country or in the UK or anything like that is going to be from ISIS or any other type of Muslims or Middle Eastern people or any. I think it's all just part of the agenda and trying to, you know, keep the agenda moving forward. And I think there's enough people that are awake and enough people that are resistant to the idea of this new world government, or I should say one world government, one world religion, which is pretty obvious that they're pushing for. And let me tell you what, it's not Christianity that they're pushing for. And I think that's pretty obvious as well. So let's go ahead and play this video, and then I've got a couple more links to do with this subject, and then we'll go on to something else. BP Earthwatch, links down in the About.
August 29th, 2014. Last week when we were watching the events in Ferguson, guys, we saw Sergeant Major Dan Page give a speech before the Oath Keepers there in the St. Louis area, and he was later put on suspension last week because of that video, they said, because he talked about Muslims, things like that. He also talked about a false flag event in the U.S. that would be centered around a false terrorist attack. Now today, Britain, or let's say the UK as the reports, says that they have raised their terror alert level. And they're saying that it's because of a book. Part of it is because of a book and the information that they picked up. But Al-Qaeda has released a booklet with detailed guide. It's full color. It's how to make bombs, how to attack Times Square, major tourist areas in the U.S., UK, and Israel. Now, I'm looking at an Israeli newspaper right now, and they are actually putting the book and how to do the bombs and things like that in their paper. It's crazy. That tells you, false flag. No way they would do this. It's incredible. I can't believe it. There's no way I will show any of this information. But why would they be showing this booklet? Full color booklet, how to make the bombs. Again, there's information in it, in the report, though, that could be critical. And I'm going to read some of that. It says, terror organization Al-Qaeda released a booklet for its jihadist operatives detailing how to make homemade bombs, recommending Western targets to attack the Middle. Now, this is coming from the Middle East Media Research Institute called MRAP. Yeah, we trust you. We really do. Among the recommended targets are Times Square, New York. You guys pay attention to this, regardless if it's a false flag or not. Either way, we pay attention to these details. It says among the recommended targets are Times Square, New York City, casinos, and nightclubs in Las Vegas, Western oil tankers, crowded trains, U.S. Air Force bases. In Britain, the guide recommends attacking the Marks and Spencer retail giant, but only on Fridays when Muslims are praying and therefore not shopping at the store. Other recommended British targets include the Royal Military Academy and the London headquarters of the MI5 guys. But again, what did it say? Fridays. But attacking the Marks and Spencer retail giant only on Fridays because the Muslims are praying and therefore not shopping at the store. Not a good day to go to the store. Also a good way to wipe out a business. You understand what I'm saying? Every chess move is really a combination of several moves pre-planned. No way that they would be putting this book in full color unless this was staged. It says worldwide, the booklet recommends targeting Israel, British, and American companies, as well as tourist resorts popular among Israelis, Britons, and Americans. The booklet included a long list of past terror attacks with praise to perpetrators. Among others, the list included the murder of Mir Khan in 1990, the 2001 World Trade Center, the 2000 terror attack in Mombasa, Kenya, and the Fort Hood shooting, the Times Square bombings attempt, and last year's bombing at the Boston Marathon. In a hint for attacks to come, the booklet leaves an empty space in the form of 201. It doesn't have a 4 or 5, 201 question mark. It says the booklet discusses Operation Protective Edge and the plight of the Palestinians at length. Remember, Protective Edge is the Israeli incursion into Gaza. Noting to solve the Palestinian problem, Muslims have tried conferences, seminars, demonstrations, processions, setting up artistical and oratorical festivals, and releasing statements of support of Muslims assaulted by the Jews. We have tried all these methods for more than 90 years, but we've never achieved any victory. We've never liberated any land. And they go on to say in the book, in quotation marks, there's no way to liberate land and preserve honor. There is no way towards a noble life except by establishing the Abadah worship of jihad, which Allah has commanded. Then it goes on and talks about some of the bomb-making ingredients and things like that. And it says Steve Stalinsky from MRAP, an organization that monitors the online media activity of jihadi groups, told the Telegraph that both ACAP and ISIS, as well as every other al-Qaeda branch and offshoot, is relying on U.S. social media companies, including Twitter and YouTube, for their cyber jihad efforts. There could be some envy by al-Qaeda that ISIS is now getting all the headlines, but al-Qaeda did release the book. But again, guys, that book would not have been published. It makes me think that if people believe that was just put in there, then you've been watching too many football games and soccer matches, guys. Get away from that crap. Wake up. Something is going on. They're preparing for some type of terrorist attack, probably in all 3 locations. Israel's got their hands full right now, but in the UK and the US, again, we are in lockstep, have been for a long time, regardless of what anyone says, controlled by the same bankers. Now, again, Fridays are mentioned because the Muslims are not shopping in some places. That would be true anywhere, not just in the UK. But it's a heads up, guys, in these big crowded malls that spread disease with Ebola going around, things like that, everything you can name, there's no place to hang out anyway. All the big crowded sporting events. When are we going to turn on the TV and watch one of these big football games and a bomb go off and blow half the stadium up? And then the tanks roll in. Wake up, be prepared. One of the things I mentioned last night, and one of the reasons I had to do some traveling, is because with the situation going on, everybody better get a plan B. And to keep it to a minimum, When I say plan B, it needs to be between you and blood kin. When I say that, fathers, mothers, if you have sons and daughters that are blood kin, only they can know of plan B, not their spouses, not their friends, not their children. They will be brought with your blood kin to wherever you have to go. But the blood kin cannot be, no one but the blood kin can be told because of divorce, fights, spats, loose lips sink ships, and that everything has to be coded and predetermined, and you may have to travel and talk person to person, not on the phone, not on the internet, not in emails, not on Facebook. And what you do, you set up a location where your family's going to meet. But it's not named the true name. And it would be good to have 3 locations, each coded. In other words, after you've set this up verbally, and you've got a plan, just say for example, the code would be a phone call saying, guys, I'm going to Atlanta. Let's go. Meet me there. Of course it wouldn't be Atlanta. Or let's go to Dallas, or let's go somewhere else. 3 places, because you never know where you may not be able to travel. Maybe restricted travel. Maybe unsafe to travel there. Or either you can keep watching TV and just line up in the sheep pens when this thing goes down. I don't want to go out that way. So, again, this cannot be discussed. I will never talk about this except what I'm telling you now in order to be prepared. Think about some of the things where you might would want to be. Maybe not in a big city with the city being blocked off. I read a terrifying article last night about a new city in Africa now. The entire, I think, 48,000 or something like that are now confined to this city. They shut down all the roads out of it, guys, so that so the Ebola can't spread, which I understand that. But these people have no really resources. No one's going in or out. It looks like a horror movie. And now they're expecting now, in the next 7 months, Ebola could kill 20,000 people, is what the press is reporting. Be aware of what is going on around you. Make your plans today. Again, if you tell your son-in-law or daughter-in-law divorces happen, don't think they don't. Don't think that trust cannot be broken, guys. A chain is only as strong as its weakest link. This is very critical. Start planning. It's a heads up and be safe.
He's got some very good advice there, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. Let me go ahead and play the second video that I have on him, or from him, and then I'm kind of doing this in a reverse order, but just bear with me. Let me play his second video that I have for you, and then we'll kind of be back to a threat, more or less. Well, the title of the headline of it is "Alarm Sound Over Imminent Attacks on U.S." But let me play his second video, and then we'll kind of backtrack a little bit and go to that, and I'll expand a little bit on what he was talking about, a couple of points he was talking about. So this video is about ISIS.
August 29th, 2014. There's breaking news coming out of Israel. And it's one of the things we've talked about a few weeks ago when we were covering the Gaza conflict. It was that ISIS was getting closer and closer. You remember that saying that was coming out of the north, and that would be one of the first areas. And it was even mentioned in the Old Testament on how these attacks would occur in this end-time battles. But what's happened, if you look at the map of Israel in the north, there is a United Nations area. It's on the Syrian border, and it's been there, I think, since the '67 war. It's been there a long time, kind of as a war zone, kind of a protective barrier set in place. But guys, ISIS has overtaken that border crossing. They have captured 124 United Nations soldiers. They are on the border of Israel. Let me read this. It says, Al-Qaeda militants battle to retain control of Syrian Golan Heights. Now, guys, you remember a lot of that was destroyed back when, then that's when the United Nations safe zone was created. It says the Syrian army is calling in reinforcements and Air Force strikes against what they're calling al-Nusra Front and other rebel Islamists who captured 124 UN soldiers. It's ISIS. Sounds of heavy fighting continued Friday afternoon on the Syrian side of the Golan Heights, where Bashar Assad's army continued in efforts to dislodge the al-Qaeda-affiliated militants who recently captured areas surrounding the Quneitra border crossing with Israel. Despite a steady flow of reinforcements to the area alongside increased strikes from the Syrian Air Force, soldiers had yet to seek success in their counter-offensive, and the flag of al-Qaeda continued flying from the tops of buildings along the border. Security forces from Israel said the developments were being closely watched and that combat from Syria seemed to be periodically increasing before fading away again throughout the day. Though gun battles are said to be taking place near the border, no effects have been felt on the Israeli side. It says, as in recent days when mortar and gunfire spilled over into the Israeli lines. Guys, this is a major move. It's in light of the continuing clashes, Israel decreed that areas near the border, which had previously been closed to civilian traffic, would remain so at least until Saturday night. The decree includes several roads and highways that pass near the border in the Golan. Syrian media with connections to the Assad regime reported Friday that the army has successfully retaken 3 villages, but that the border crossing itself remained under control of Islamic militants. Reports from the war-torn country also suggested that the al-Qaeda militants have received aid and arms from the Israeli Defense Force. Israel, of course, gave no such help to the rebel militants, and IDF troops remained on high alert along the border in light of the capture. It says Thursday of 81 Filipino and 43 Fiji UN troops in the Syrian Golan Heights. And that's exactly what it is. It looks like a big prison gate, and there's high fences, and there's tank barriers and things like that. But now that border crossing, think about it. That's the border crossing between Syria and Israel. Now, they said several militant groups seem to have joined together in the assault against the Syrian army. Al-Qaeda's branch in Syria, also known as al-Nusra, led the offensive and was apparently responsible for the capture of United Nations troops. The group released a video Thursday which showed militants in combat as they took control of the Quneitra border crossing. In the video, fighters also could be heard talking about the strategic value of the crossing as the connection between the Syrian territories and the Golan, which have been occupied by Jews for 50 years. It no longer is at this point. A senior member of the organization could also be heard in the video reading an announcement that they had captured the crossing before saying that the militants hoped that the military gains near the Israel would open the road to Damascus and the surrounding areas. They said that the entire time. They said that they would attack any nation that supports Israel. There's been a lot of threats, we know that, and we're watching for some type of event that they've been talking about. I heard about 3 days ago, guys, on national radio that they were expecting a terrorist attack in the U.S. Whether false flag, we don't know, but always be aware that that can happen. If you haven't seen In Plain Sight, you can Google the movie, you need to see it. But it's an update on this, guys. We need to watch this closely because the only way you're going to stop ISIS, and we've seen it in Iraq, is that the U.S. and the UK comes in there and the Air Force start bombing their positions and their equipment. But this, again, we're talking about the border of Israel, and and if you ask me, guys, just thinking about it for a minute, they are saying, or we'll say that Al-Qaeda or ISIS, is that they are on the road to Damascus. I think they have cornered Bashar Assad in Damascus, in that area, just like they have the Iraqi government has basically been cornered into Baghdad. They don't have to take those towns anymore. They're accomplishing what they need. They're spending all this oil money. They go, you know, they've taken the oil fields in Iraq, most of them, and they're estimated at about $2 to $3 million a day revenue into ISIS just from that, plus the banks that they took and the other things like the electric companies and dams. But again, if they're saying they're going to go north, they're going to go south. They don't care about Syria, Damascus at this point. Damascus is in ruins. It's a fake. It's a head fake, whoever's in control of this group. But they will come back. Damascus, we know, will be left in a heap. It looks like it already. But this is a heads up on this. Be safe.
Okay, there was a reason I switched stories around there. Anyway, so I wanted to point out a couple of things that he had mentioned in the previous video. One of them being is I wanted to point out about the media and how the media is being such a strong push towards all this, and they have been for quite some time. So the media over there is releasing this booklet that has some pretty crazy information in it, obviously. And not that long ago, like within the last year and a half or so, or maybe two, the media in the U.S. released a bunch of important information about our power grid and about how easily it could be taken down. And it almost seems like they are inviting something to happen, and it's kind of messed up. The other thing I wanted to point out, which the media thing is really important, but the other thing, just as if not more important, that he talked about was having a plan. If you don't have a plan, set up a plan now. Use this weekend to set up a plan. And he made some very good points. Always make sure you have a plan B. Always make sure. Now, he was talking about keeping it minimal, as in who knows about it. I want to talk a little bit about keeping it minimal, about the plan itself. You don't want to go nuts with a plan. You don't want to sit there and organize everything and just be, well, we'll do this and then this and then this and then this and then this. And the reason why, it's because the more detailed your plan gets, the more likely there's going to be a monkey wrench thrown in it. And if you have everything all planned out and you work through it and you think about it over and over and over and you get that monkey wrench thrown in it, it's going to be a little harder for you to adapt. So you kind of want to have, plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G, for every single step. You kind of want to almost leave it open. And that's pretty much what I do. Yes, I do have a plan. I do have a set in stone plan. But let me tell you something. It's so minimal it would blow your mind. Okay? It would blow your mind just how minimal my plan is. It basically consists of putting the people together, getting the people together that I plan to start out with, okay? And that's pretty much the extent of it. I don't go into great detail. I don't go deep into it because things are going to be so dependent on exactly what happens, on exactly that particular situation at that particular time. And things are going to change very quickly, depending on what happens and then what happens after that and then what, it just isn't worth the time and the effort to get into extreme detail and fine-tune a plan when very likely you're not going to be able to carry that plan out exactly as you had in mind. So anyway, those things I wanted to point out. Now to that article I was referring to, that other article. Let's see here. I'm going to try and speed the news up. We got like 10 minutes left on our scheduled time. Okay. Alarm sounds over imminent attacks on U.S. The U.S. government is warning a terrorist attack is imminent on the border between Texas and Mexico, according to the government watchdog group Judicial Watch. The group said sources have told it the Mideast terrorist army ISIS is now operating in the Mexican city of Ciudad Juarez. I know I probably pronounced that wrong. The narcotics trafficking center located just across the border from El Paso, Texas, and it is planning to attack the U.S. with car bombs or improvised explosive devices carried by vehicles. Judicial Watch said high-level federal law enforcement, intelligence, and other sources have confirmed that a warning bulletin for an imminent terrorist attack on the border was issued, and that agents for the Departments of Defense, Justice, and Homeland Security have been put on alert and told to aggressively work on all sources and potential leads. One source told Judicial Watch intelligence officials picked up radio talk and chatter. There's that word chatter. There was, you might remember that from the past, but pointing to an attack on the border. The source said both ISIS and Al-Qaeda were planning plots and told Judicial Watch an attack is coming very soon. Another source told the group the attack is so imminent, the commanding general at the U.S. Army's Fort Bliss in El Paso is being briefed. A Texas law enforcement bulletin sent out this week reportedly shows ISIS is keenly aware of the porous border in the area, and social media chatter shows it has expressed an increased interest in crossing the border to conduct an attack. The 3-page bulletin obtained by Fox News was titled ISIS Interest on the U.S. Southwest Border and distributed to law enforcement Thursday. That appears to coincide with WND reported 3 days ago that the FBI and Department of Homeland Security were so worried that airstrikes in Iraq could cause ISIS to retaliate in America. What it's supposed to say. The agency sent warnings to local law enforcement officials. Friday's report threat from ISIS comes the day after WND reported President Obama acknowledged that he has no strategy to deal with the terrorist army. Obama was blasted for that admission. Of course he don't. This is a chess game. We have to make it look like it's a surprise, and they really catch us off guard, and they do so much more damage than they do because we have to usher in this agenda. We have to welcome in this agenda. We have to be afraid. We have to be afraid enough to say, please protect us. Please protect us. Or else their plan won't work. Representative Paul Ryan said the strategy could be simply to finish them off. Not to contain them, but to fundamentally finish them off. And I don't think the president sees this moment for what it is, he said. Senator John McCain tweeted, ISIS is the target, richest terrorist group in history, and 192,000 dead in Syria. Chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Representative Mike Rogers, lamented, I'm not sure the severity of the problem has really sunk into the administration just yet. However, Rogers and Obama had plenty of warning because even the president said he was talking about this to Iraqi officials over a year ago. He maintained the administration should have and could have attacked ISIS targets long ago, but it gained momentum because when a terrorist organization acts like an army, they present military targets the way any other army would do. Friday's threat also comes as Britain has raised its terror threat level to severe as the anniversary of September 11, 2001 terror attacks near. A White House spokeswoman said today the U.S. had no plans to raise the threat level in this country. However, U.S. intelligence sources told WND just last week that ISIS was training jihadis to attack targets in the United States. Also last week, Senator Jim Inhofe warned ISIS of rapidly developing a method of blowing up a major U.S. city. The ranking Republican on the Armed Service Committee in U.S. Senate said that U.S. is now in the most dangerous position we've ever been. And as WND reported last week, Governor Rick Perry of Texas warned terrorists from the Islamic State could be sneaking into Texas across the southwest border at any time due to the Obama administration's failures in Iraq in securing the border. Pentagon Press Secretary Navy Rear Admiral John Kirby immediately denied any evidence of Perry's claims. See, and this is what's going to happen. It's just going to be a back and forth. It's his fault, it's his fault, it's his. Well, it still happens. Nobody's doing anything. They're just pointing fingers. Nobody's doing anything. Just like in Ferguson, all the government would have to do is ask the militias for help. They want that security board, the border secured. I'm sorry, if they want the border secured, all they got to do is say something. We are more than capable as American citizens to protect that border. It's a fact. It's a fact. That's all they have to do is ask people. Just ask us. You know, if they don't have a plan, if they don't have the resources, if they don't have the money, all they have to do is ask. It's that simple. This is disgusting what's going on, and the American people are allowing it. Because they're too busy doing this, they're too busy doing that. And you notice all these politicians are using social media to spread this propaganda. Let's not misname it here. It's propaganda. It's exactly what it is. Folks, you better look out. There is and I don't want to use a phrase from a movie, but there is a clear and present danger. And I'm not saying that to fearmonger. I'm saying that because it is a reality. It's a reality. And just like they used 9/11 to scare us into allowing the Patriot Act to be put in place, how they tried using Sandy Hook to scare the American public into giving up their firearms, and then how they used the Boston Marathon bombing to scare people into allowing martial law into their communities. You know how close they came to passing some crazy, crazy firearms laws? And they did achieve in some areas to pass some pretty crazy stuff. And the American people, for the most part, are allowing it. My hat's off to those in Connecticut that said, no, we're not going to register these firearms. My hat's off to them. Those are Americans. Those people deserve the title. Those people deserve to be in this country because they stood up. They stood up. A lot of people don't realize that we're actually obligated, even as an American citizen, we are obligated to uphold the Constitution of the United States. That's right. Obligated. While most people are playing games or watching TV, we're supposed to be obligated. Being born in this country, we are supposed to be contracted to protect the best interests of that Constitution. And most people don't even know what's in it. It's sad. And it's gotten to the point that now they are changing it and teaching our youth a totally different Constitution than what actually exists. And we're allowing it. You may say, oh, well, no, you know, I've been saying this on Facebook. I've said this on Facebook. You know what? That's as goofy as everything else I see on Facebook. And I'm not saying, because I mean, I use Facebook as a platform as well. I'm saying not to do that. But what I'm saying is doing that alone is useless. Absolutely useless. We have to actually do something. And I realize that some people, even myself, are extremely limited on what we can do. But there is one thing we can all afford to do, and that's start talking to each other in a real way, in a serious way. We can start taking to the streets. Because I'm telling you what, calling your senator, calling your representatives, that's going to get you nowhere except some goofy form letter sent to you or goofy email sent back to you that was wrote up once and copied and pasted to anybody that contacts them, what's that going to do? Nothing. The only way to get a reaction is to go with where you see their reaction, and that is to take to the streets. That's a fact. That's why they've got all these vehicles. That's why they've got all these plans in place. It's because they realize at some point we're going to get the bright idea and figure it out. They're ready for us. We're not near ready for them. You know how hard it is even to get somebody to store a little bit of extra food? And I'm talking about those that can afford to do it. Then you've got the other side of the problem where the people that can't afford to store some extra food. You know, and then they've got people so pitted against one another. Those that could afford to store a lot of extra food have no interest in helping somebody that can't afford to store a little extra food. We are in a bad position. A very, very bad position. And we're out of time. We're out of time. Watch what the media is pushing. They're not just doing this to fearmonger. They're doing this to set up a story. You know, there's a lot of people waking up in this country and catching on to what's going on. There really is. But just as much, there's a lot of people that don't know enough of the truth to be able to understand what's really going on when it happens. And that's just as sad. So real quick, let me go over these other stories I've got, because I'm running over on time here. One of these days I need to let go and have a rant. So anyway, I'll let this video play, take it for what it's worth. And it's pretty well self-explanatory.
You can still see remnants of the protest that took place here on West 4th. And windows of the businesses that were looted, like here at Sam's Meat Market, still boarded up. Now, 2 law officers are looking for new jobs because of what they did when the protests were happening. Lieutenant Ray Albers with the St. Anne Police Department resigned yesterday. He was caught on cell phone video pointing an assault rifle at protesters and threatening to kill them if they didn't move back. He also cursed at the demonstrators. Albers was suspended after that video surfaced. Before pointing the gun and making the comments, Albers had water and urine thrown at him and heard gunshots in the area. A St. Louis County police sergeant had Albers lower his gun and walk away. Meanwhile, Glendale police officer Matthew Pappert was fired yesterday for what he wrote about the protesters on his personal Facebook page. Pappert was initially suspended a week ago after Glendale city officials found out he wrote that the protesters and that they were, quote, a burden on society and a blight on the community. Pappert was not involved in security efforts in Ferguson and apologized for his comments through an attorney. Margin, John, back to you.
And Chris, what are city leaders saying about both of these cases?
John, Glendale's city administrator put out a statement yesterday saying Pappert was fired after an internal investigation was completed. The statement reiterating that Pappert's comments don't reflect the views of the city of Glendale. St. Anne's police chief is quoted in our news partner, the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, as saying that while he does not condone Albers' behavior, the resignation is tough because Albers was a good friend and a good boss. Thank you.
All right, Chris Renier, thanks for that story.
Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, that is a little something that we call damage control. There was just an outrage at that, and there was, it was so easily proven because of all the video evidence, and then the one idiot actually put something on social media. So there was proof, there was evidence. That's the only reason why you see anything happening, because let me tell you what, if there was no way to prove it, these guys wouldn't be looking for a job. They would be getting a promotion and a raise, and I assure you of that. And if you don't think that's correct, look at what happened to different officers back. Once again, I'm going to mention the Occupy Wall Street protests. Look at what happened to the different officers that it is known had done some pretty nasty things to innocent people. So, and be prepared for that. You know, I just talked about taking to the streets and that being the only answer to fix anything. Be prepared for that. They're going to fight back. They're going to fight back in a way like you would never imagine could ever happen in this country. I'm telling you. And it's probably going to be worse in this country than what we've seen in a lot of countries. And I mean that. I mean that. I expect it to be worse than Egypt. I expect it to be worse than any of those countries over there for the most part. Just because, well, we were the cause for a lot of that disturbance to go on in other countries. It was provocated in order to put in a regime that we controlled more or less, or the bankers controlled. And so, therefore, when we try to take down their regime, it's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be pretty. They're not going to just walk away. It's not going to be simple. It's not going to be easy. And it's just the thought of it frightens me. So I just wanted to play that. I mean, again, it's just damage control. That's all it is. So you want to see some more damage control. You want to see some more games being played in order to win the hearts and minds. Another article. I show these because if it's put with the right information surrounding the story, you get a better idea of what is really going on and how far they are really willing to go to achieve their agenda. City Council tells police they have 60 days to plan to destroy or remove their MRAP vehicle. Davis County, California council members could set a trend after they listened to the public and ordered the police to find a way to getting rid of the department's newly acquired mine-resistant ambush-protected vehicle. The City Council held an open meeting to listen to public concerns about the MRAP and adopted a resolution demanding the police deliver a plan to get rid of the offending vehicle. One man was quoted as saying, "I would like to say I do not suggest you take this vehicle and send it out of Davis. I demand it." The few in favor of keeping the MRAP did their best to come up with legitimate uses for the vehicle. One of the suggested uses, since you can't give it back, it should be repurposed. You can put a water cannon on it. The reader should allow that statement to sink in. The best legitimate use offered was to outfit the vehicle with the same equipment they used to deny equal rights during the 1960s. The cannons were used for the same reason in South Africa in the 1980s. Water cannons are typically used in totalitarian countries to disperse the huddled masses who are clamoring for freedom in some form of non-violent protest. This is the best use of the vehicle. Now, what was I just talking about? Echoing statements by police chiefs and sheriffs across the country who obtained the military vehicles, Police Chief Landry Black indicated the MRAP would only be used in certain situations, though it is unclear how exactly the department would have deployed the controversial vehicle. The only vote in favor of keeping the vehicle in the police department's arsenal came from Councilman Brett D. Lee. One could hope that it is the start of a national trend that seeks to curtail law enforcement's continuing overreach and militarization. MRAPs are deployed in Ferguson to intimidate protesters who police believe should have been put down like a rabid dog the first night. And I realize that that article is from a opinionated website, but you know, we can remove all opinion from that rather easily and understand what these vehicles are being used for. Look at what they were used for. Not much opinion with that. I see a lot of fact. I told you, it's not going to be pretty. And it's not. It's not. They are ready. They've been getting ready for years. People like myself have been screaming and begging people to wake up, and nobody cared enough to listen. Oh, their Walking Dead is coming on. That's more important than our freedom. That's more important than our total economic system collapsing. I've got to see Daryl Dixon. I think that's his name. I don't know. I don't watch the show. I don't watch TV. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And it's still going on. Granted, more people are waking up, but I even see a lot of quote-unquote awake people that are only awake long enough until their little hobby of whatever comes along. I've been trying very hard to not let myself get distracted. Yeah, it's not a fun life. It's rather boring, kind of dull, and it's really lonely. I hope it doesn't stay that way long. I really hope. Got one more article for you. And I went over a similar article not that long ago. FBI terror report. Militia, sovereign citizens, greater threat than Islamic terrorists. And I did an article like this not long ago. This is from InfoWars, like it or not. The FBI's latest national threat assessment lists so-called sovereign citizens and the militia as threats to U.S. internal security while completely omitting Islamic terrorists. See? See? And I don't care where this is from. That's correct. That is correct. Go look it out yourself. Or check it out yourself. The August 14th National Threat Assessment for Domestic Extremism, which is obtained by the Washington Free Beacon, claims that militia members and sovereign citizens are among those aspired to carry out violent attacks. Yet it only indirectly mentions Islamic terrorism as a footnote describing other types of domestic extremism not included in the report. Of a sample of 50 credible violent threat intelligence reports analyzed for this assessment, nearly 60% expressed lethal violence as an ultimate goal, the report asserts. The report reads like a spiritual successor to the previous publications by the Southern Poverty Law Center, which has routinely demonized constitutionalists and other libertarians by grouping them in with white supremacists and other racist organizations. And unfortunately, it should be no surprise the FBI considers freedom-loving Americans a larger threat than violent Islamic extremists when previous actions by the federal government to suppress political dissidents are taken into consideration. Earlier this month, a university consortium funded by the Department of Homeland Security designated sovereign citizens as the #1 domestic terrorist threat in America, ranking them above Islamic extremism in agreement with the FBI's terror assessment. The University of Maryland's National Consortium, I know I'm probably saying that wrong, for the study of terrorism and responses to terrorism and sovereign citizens were the top concern of law enforcement. It recommended that state and federal law enforcement share intelligence on sovereign citizens and other targeted groups, develop tactical responses to threats, and act on that information to prevent or mitigate threats. Similarly, in 2011, the FBI said it considers sovereign citizen extremists as comprising a domestic terrorist movement. But as journalist Kurt Nemo pointed out, sovereign citizens do not actually constitute a cohesive movement despite the government's attempts to characterize them as such. No, they want to be left alone. They aren't making violent threats. They just want to be left alone. That's it. It's really that simple. That's what makes them a threat. Because if that idea spreads, then our government loses their power. And they don't want to do that. They don't want to do that. The link is down in the About tab. Feel free to check it out. I'm gonna play this little video back from 2008. It's a short little 1:46 video, but you know, and I admit my mistakes. I have no problem doing that. I actually voted for the guy for Obama in 2008. After promising I'd never vote in my life because I didn't want to be responsible for what crook gets in office, I fell for it, and I myself voted to get that crook in office. I will not vote again, not unless this country makes a drastic change. A drastic change. And we actually have a real vote with real candidates, and all these banks and lawyers and corporations and all that out of the picture. I will not waste my time. This is my vote. What I'm doing right now is my vote. I vote none of it. I vote do-over. That's what I vote. So let's check out. Let's check this out. I found it rather interesting. I'll just play the video. It's about these truth squads. Taking action against misleading political ads. And I think it's kind of humorous if you listen to what it includes.
Early voting is not allowed in Missouri, only absentee.
Senator Barack Obama's presidential campaign is asking Missouri law enforcement to target anyone who lies or runs a misleading television ad during the presidential campaign. This first, John Mills is live at the county election board in Maplewood. He's been learning more about which members of law enforcement are getting involved in this. John, tell us more about this.
Russell, good evening. Prosecutors and sheriffs from across Missouri are joining something called the Barack Obama Truth Squad. Two high-profile prosecutors are part of the team. We met them this afternoon in the Central West End. They are Jennifer Joyce from the city, Bob McCullough, the St. Louis County prosecuting attorney. They will be reminding voters that Barack Obama is a Christian who wants to cut taxes for anyone making less than $250,000 a year. They also say they plan to respond immediately to any ads and statements that might violate Missouri ethics laws.
We want to keep this campaign focused on issues. We don't want people to get distracted, and Missourians don't want to be distracted by these divisive character attacks. So we're here to respond to any character attacks, to set the record straight.
Whether it is directly attributable to the campaign or to one of the soft money operations, if they're not going to tell the truth, then somebody's got to step up and say, wait a minute, that's not true, this is the truth.
Now, the Obama campaign tells News 4 that others, prosecutors and sheriffs, are also part of the team, including some from the Kansas City area and from rural parts of Missouri. We're also told the Truth Squad is expected to include Jefferson County Sheriff Glenn Boyer. Live in Maplewood, John Mills, News 4.
John, thank you.
I just wonder how much money they got paid to support the lies. Seriously, because that's what happened. But anyway, that's what I have for you. I will urge you, if you love somebody, wake them up. Please. Spend the weekend, talk to those you love. Wake them up. And those you succeed in waking up, make a plan. This weekend. No more excuses. Get it done this weekend. After all, you do love them, right? That's what I got for you. God bless you. May God walk with you. I love you all, or else I wouldn't be spreading this message. I really wouldn't. Hang in there. It's going to be a rough road, but we can do it. We're Americans. We can do it. I will see you Monday unless something else comes up. Be one with your spirit. And just do your best. Wake up as many people as you can. Good night. Enjoy your weekend.